unlocking new levels of engagement while addressing the legal challenges that come with tokenised ecosystems. So welcome on up.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here today with you to talk about tokenization of communities, more specifically the tokenization of sport communities. For those of you who are familiar with Chili's and social.com, what we are doing there, you would understand why we are trying to focus on sport communities specifically. So, tokenization has always been a very fancy topic within the crypto industry. As a lawyer, when I hear tokenization, I sometimes hear securities. Now, that can mean two things. Either I need to consult a doctor or I'm just a bad lawyer. But we'll get back to that in a few moments. Why? Because in reality, whether your token constitute a security or not depends on what you are going to tokenize. And when it comes to tokenization, as we say in the industry, if it exists, someone is probably going to tokenize it. So, the perfect example of that would be meme coins. It's not the topic of the day, but meme coins are basically tokenized internet jokes, right? And everyone pretty much agrees on the fact that meme coins are not securities. Why? Because meme coins are not sold with an investment purpose, they do not promise any profit to their holders, and they do not offer any rights or provide any specific utilities. Now, when it comes to sport communities, the question would be, what is it exactly that we can tokenize? The idea is not to actually create a digital persona of the fan and to separate them from the support that they bring to the team in real life, but it's actually the opposite. The idea is to bring those fans on chain, and what can be tokenized to actually do that? So when it comes to sport, there are many things that we can tokenize. I would say the first things that we can think about are tokenized memories. We all remember, or at least if you are a football fan, you would remember Zinedine Zidane's headbutt on Materazzi during the 2006 World Cup final. That's a pretty painful memory to me. But if you're an Italian football fan, you might want to have this memory tokenized on chain. How can you do that? You can do that through the name of a photo or a video from that specific game, provided that if actually there is any exclusivity rights that are attached to the photo or to the video, what you are tokenizing is actually that exclusivity rights. It's not the photo or the video itself. The second thing that we can think about pretty obviously is a ticketing system. Sport organizations are creating sport events and they are selling tickets to their fans. Now it's pretty much easy for fans to go on secondary marketplace and to resell those tickets. By using blockchain technology, by using NFTs, sport organizations can actually keep control over the ownership and the transferability of tickets. And those tickets, in turn, also serve for the fan as a proof of attendance to such events, which can be used to demonstrate their support to the team in the bad time, in the good time, and can be used to be rewarded for that support. Another thing that we could tokenize, I'm not sure if you heard of the recent launch of football.fun, but we can tokenize athletes and their performances. How can we do that? We can create an NFT that represents a specific athlete, and the value of that NFT would actually vary during the athlete's career, and by buying a fractionalized part of that NFT, you can actually take advantage of the player performance. Another thing that we can tokenize, which is actually, I would say, just another layer on top of what I just explained, will be the tokenization of real-world assets. I mentioned the 2006 World Cup final. You might want to actually get the ball that was scored, that served to score a goal during that game. So that specific ball can be tokenized. Not just the ball, but you can also tokenize the jersey that the player who scored the game was wearing at that time. Here, it's important to keep in mind that we are not only talking about movable things, and actually tokenization here can bring something when it comes to assets that cannot be possessed by the fan. I just mentioned the scenario of a player scoring a goal. You might want, or as a fan, you might consider that the square meter of the pitch from where the goal was scored has a high value to you. You cannot just go to your team and ask for the team to buy the square meter of the pitch. They need it. But if you digitalize the pitch and tokenize every square meter of the pitch, you can actually allow fans to buy, to own rights over that part of the field, and to trade it if they consider that another part of the field would have more value in the future. We can also think about things such as the seats of the stadium that you might want to buy to show that this is the place where you are going to sit. Or you might just decide to tokenize the whole stadium. Why not? Here we can see how tokenization is actually a mean for sport organizations, specifically small sport organizations, to also raise funds through that process. Now, those are a lot of different things that we can tokenize, but we are not really tokenizing sports engagement. I don't know if some of you are fan of Manchester United, but since he was also a French football legend, you might know what Eric Cantona said once about football and this football team. You can change your wife, you can change your religion, but you cannot change your football team. How can we tokenize that? How can we tokenize something that by itself is impossible to value and to measure? The idea here is to tokenize fan engagement through the means of fan tokens. Fan tokens are meant to give a voice to fans and to allow them to support their team in different ways. What fan token actually brings here is the possibility for fans to participate in decisions relevant to their team. Which decision? It can be pretty much anything. It can be which player should be the captain of the team for the next season. It could be which song should be played in the stadium when the team scores a goal. Pretty much anything. And in return for participating, for using their voting rights, we can reward fans by providing them with utilities. If I participate, if I vote on decision, if I'm active, then I can receive some rewards. Which rewards? Again, it can be a lot of different rewards. It can be real-life events, for instance, being in the dressing room with the team, or traveling with the team when the team plays away. It can be just having discounts or VIP tickets for sport events organized by the team. So here we're talking about fan engagement. That's how we actually transform the fan into passive fans, from passive fans into active shareholder of the team. Now, there will be a lot of different legal challenges to do that. The first legal challenge that is usually overlooked is IP rights. If you are the sport team yourself, it's pretty much easy. But if you want to tokenize a sport community in collaboration with a sport organization, that becomes a little bit more complicated. If we think about sport community, we think about a team, we think about a league, it can be the NBA, it can be Los Angeles Lakers, whatever. Those teams today are commercial brands, and as any other commercial brands, their IP rights are something to be protected very carefully. The logo of the team, the design of the jersey, this type of things constitute the intellectual property of the team. And for teams that are 100 years old, such as FC Barcelona, Real Madrid, it's very important to protect them. And when it comes to tokenizing that and to put it in a decentralized ecosystem, it's pretty hard to convince them that there is no risk associated with that. Sometimes you should not even just talk with the team, you should actually talk with someone else. Specifically in US sports, if you want to tokenize athletes, you want to develop an NFT that has the likeness of a player, you need to actually burden those athletes' rights collectively, which makes it even more complicated to actually obtain those IP rights. And you can still do it if you don't have the IP rights, yeah, sure. But here the problem is that there might be challenges, oppositions, in case of infringement. And that can actually negatively impact your project, because if there is an opposition, if there is a legal challenge, then third parties will be very skeptical about listing the token on their own platform or integrating the token on their own platforms. But let's say, okay, you got the IP rights from your team, so you are now willing to tokenize the sport community. That's perfectly fine. The second legal challenge that will come is the structure of the leagues and the constraints that it imposes on teams. When a team wants to join a league, such as the NBA, there is different rules at the league level that the teams must comply with if they want to remain part of that league. I mentioned the NBA. There is the NBA constitution and bylaws that, for instance, impose different rules to NBA teams. If we look at European sports, football, there is, for instance, the UEFA competition rules that prevent teams from having their local sponsors during certain events, certain games, close to the media. So that's something that team cannot offer to their fan. We have the same thing with the FIFA transfer rules. The FIFA transfer rules prevent anyone, any third party, from having an influence on the transfer of players. So yeah, of course, I could ask my fan, which player do you want to sign for next year? But no, I can't, because FIFA will come to me and tell me, no, you are not authorized to ask your fan to make that decision. The third thing, provided that you decide to comply with the rules from the leagues, so you know which pods you can offer to your fan, you know which utilities you can offer. Now, based on those utilities, you need to look at what will be the legal classification of your token. There is different type of token classification. By the way, one of the questions that sometimes I got asked is whether fan token are a specific type of crypto assets, and sometimes whether fan token are not just meme coins, which is actually an interesting conversation, because fan tokens are tokens meant to tokenize a community, such as meme coin. Meme coin tokenize an internet community. Now, fan tokens are not a specific type of crypto asset. Most jurisdictions actually recognize different types of crypto assets. Most of them will have a classification around security token, payment token, and utility token. When it comes to fan token, it's not a specific type, but it's a trademark from the Socios Group. What it means is that, in the same way that Jeep is a car constructor, but everyone uses the word Jeep to refer to a similar type of car, a A fan token is a token issued by socios, but everyone uses the word fan token to refer to community token, even if not issued by socios. So, I started this speech by mentioning the word securities. Here, it's important to understand that due to the nature of crypto assets and due to the nature of crypto asset markets, even if your token is meant to only provide utilities, there might be somewhere some regulators that consider that your token should also comply with financial laws. Which financial laws? Well, again, it depends on which jurisdiction you are looking at. If we focus on the US, we have a concept of securities. What is the securities under US laws? Pretty much everything. Everything can be a security. To define if an asset is a security, courts and regulators, specifically the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, will look at how your token is being sold and marketed to potential investors. The idea of the Howey test is that any asset can be a security if it involves an investment of money with an expectation of profit derived from the efforts of other people. So, the Howey test is actually very much important when it comes to US laws. And it's important to note that over the last year, it was heavily challenged in legal cases opposing the SEC to big industry players such as Coinbase and Ripple, whether that Howey test, which is issued from 1946 Supreme Court case, should actually apply to crypto assets. The answer sounds obvious to us, but for the SEC and for the lawmakers in the US, it wasn't, and I guess it's still not very clear. So, your tokens, if it involves an investment of money in a common enterprise with an expectation of profit that they release from the effort of others, would constitute a security. And what does it mean? It means that your token would actually fall within the competency of the SEC, which means that it would trigger certain legal requirements in terms of investor protection, in terms of disclosure, etc. If we look at EU laws, here the question is actually different. There is no such thing as the Howey test or the general concept of securities under EU laws. EU laws are pretty much fragmented, unfortunately. When it comes to assessing the classification of a token, you must look at different frameworks. You must look at MiFID II, which defines what constitutes financial instruments. And MiFID II actually proposed 11 different types of financial instruments. But you need also to look at whether your token could classify as e-money under the EMD2 directive. And you might also look at whether your token constitutes a collective investment scheme under a different EU framework. So there are many different texts you should look at. Most of the time, I would say the analysis would focus on whether the token constitutes a financial instrument under MiFID. Under MiFID, as I said, we have 11 types of financial instruments, one of them being transferable securities. Transferable securities are traditional securities such as stocks and bonds. So, if your token actually offer rights that are very similar to the rights that traditional securities confers. If we talk about stock, what are the rights associated with stocks? Voting rights, dividend rights, those would be the two main rights associated with stocks. So if your token confers the same type of right, it is likely that some regulator somewhere would consider that your token is classified as a financial instrument. And to make things even more exciting, from a regulatory perspective, MiFID is a directive, a European directive. What does it mean? It means that every single member state had to promote their own law to transpose MiFID for it to apply it to their national laws. And the problem here is that between the Maltese regulator and the French regulator, between the two ways they decided to transpose the directive, the definition of financial instrument can sometimes be slightly different. And from this slight difference, some regulators might look at an asset as a financial instrument, while another regulator within the EU would consider that this asset is not a financial instrument. So, when we're here, we already did pretty much all of the job from a legal perspective. You can assess whether your token complies with IP rights, whether it complies with the league rules, whether it complies with financial laws, but there is something else that is very important when it comes to sports specifically: gambling regulation. Gambling markets are heavily regulated as well. And for that reason, if your token is associated with any liquidity pool, on-chain reward mechanics, prediction market, there is a chance that regulators also consider that your token constitutes a gambling product. And then there will be other requirements for you to comply with. Those are the main 4 points, but that's not all, obviously. Even if you did all that way through, then you should know that the job is not completed yet. You need to look at your marketing communication, whether your marketing communication, your interface is compliant with applicable laws. Under MiCA, for instance, all marketing communication must be clear, fair, and non-misleading. You need also to look at data protection laws, whether if you collect data from your users, how you process those data. And here, the way to process the data must be compliant with the laws of the jurisdiction of that specific user. You also need, and that's actually a very important point, to make sure that you comply with AML laws. If you sell your token to someone at some point, then it is very likely that you will need to comply with AML laws, and you better be fully compliant on that way. So, those are the main challenges that you may face trying to tokenize sport communities. As I said, it makes it very complicated when it comes to tokenizing sport communities in decentralized and permissionless ecosystem, because this regulatory fragmentation actually leads to assessing different laws depending on the market you want to target, and that makes the whole job very, very complicated. One way forward to move from that would be to actually take advantage of that regulatory fragmentation and turn it into regulatory opportunities. A way to do that, which might be the perfect vehicle, but not the only one, would be for sport communities to constitute themselves as a DAO, as a decentralized autonomous organization. By doing that, sport communities can actually ensure that the voting utilities they will provide to token holders are compliant at the DAO level. You can also ensure that there will be no distribution of profits. If we look at the DUNA framework from the Wyoming in the US, which is a decentralized, unincorporated, non-profit association, the purpose of those legal vehicles is specifically to ensure that people can vote, people can be rewarded also for their votes, but there will be no distribution of profits. So this might be the way forward for sport communities. Obviously, there is still a lot of job to be done here, but I'm pretty confident that with time, with sport communities being more aware of the benefits of decentralization, of blockchain technology, and what those structure can bring to them, there's a chance that the sport community, the tokenization of sport community grow faster in the next year than it has grown over the 20 or 30 last years. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Yep.
So I've been actually following your project for quite a while. We've been working on the project as well on our channel. I just want to know from the fans that we have of your project on our channel, I just want to know, do you see in the future that maybe by owning these fan tokens, for example, the people that are actual fan of the club, do you see them bringing actual decisions about the club, like transfers of players?
As I said, those are very likely to stay with the sport organizations themselves. Not because of applicable laws, but because of the rules that are imposed by the leagues themselves. We had a case like that a few years back with Chili's, where FIFA was questioning about one of the voting proposals that was made to FAN. So, on that point, there is very little that can be done, obviously. And if we think about DAO also have limitation. What guarantees that token holders will actually keep voting, keep being invested? Here, we're talking about a purpose that is slightly different from the purpose of the crypto community, which is always revolving around profits. We're talking about the love that fans have for their sport teams. And for that reason, fans might be less willing to actually make profits out of their fan token. They might be willing to keep the token even when market conditions are not good. And those are actually incentivizing fans for doing so.
Thank you.
Any other question? Anyone?
Awesome. Thank you so much for that in-depth insight. So next, I'm super excited to welcome the next speaker to the stage. This speaker I had an enlightened conversation with last night about memetics. So Deville, or Miyamoto, is going to come to the stage for the Chain Block Summit. And he's going to talk, he's an artist and a dev for Ugo Labs. He's going to share his insights from his research on memetics, exploring his thesis, the spiritual paradigm of memetism. He'll dive into the idea of memes as units of thought, just as DNA is the unit of life, and examine economic dimensions of meme coins as value vessels that connect ideas, communities, and capital within the digital age. So welcome to the
Серьезно. Серьезно. Технические проблемы. Славянин. Все от нашей земли. И опять.
No, I can go. Yeah, sure.
Here you go. Yeah. It's not this.
Hello. There we go. Well, my name is David Escolaza, as known as Point Miyamoto on X, for those who like to play a little bit in the trenches, NFTs, meme points, and you might be asking yourself, what is this guy doing here, talking about memes or memetics? And don't worry, I've been asking that thing myself, so I have a mission today, and my mission is very simple. I want you to have an open mind to listen a little bit about what I'm going to be speaking about, because I'm not only going to speak about meme points, I'm going to speak about what memes are and what they represent to our culture and to our society. So let's jump in. What is a meme? A meme is the smallest unit of thought. The same way DNA is the smallest unit of life, meaning that memes, the same way that DNA carry information, the memes and memetics, they carry ideas. And there is a great writer called Richard Dawkins. He wrote The Selfish Gene and explains how the genes goes through people and how the genes survive based on selfish behaviors. And that's basically how the memetics survive across culture and across society, because when a meme goes from person to person, generation to generation, it continuously changes based on how funny it is, how we make it sound. And that's when we add music, images, art, stickers, emojis, all those things from our society are memes. So we all know, and we've all had songs basically locked in our head at some point in our life, where we start singing and we pass that song to another person in our family, and usually that song changes, right? And that's what we call earworms, and that is memetic propagation. We are propagating a cultural-based idea or form of art from one person to another. And depending on how selfish it is, that meme or memetic is how long and far it's gonna get. So whenever I sing a song, I kind of like tweak it a little bit, and when you hear it, you change a little bit about the pronunciation based on how your subconscious beliefs think it's going to sound better for the song to propagate itself more and more. So we as humans, we spread memes and ideas by imitation. We unconsciously or even consciously, when we admire someone, we start imitating their ways, we start imitating their pronunciation, we imitate how they dress, and those are memetic forms. And we go to virality, and virality, it is the natural way of how memes become mainstream. Where the memes come from? The memes come from the old cavemans, and the cavemans used to paint on the walls in order to survive, in order to propagate information, and in order to communicate how they hunt, how they eat, and how they propagate. So they were our first artists, right? And they used different things to create memetics on the walls and images. Then we go to the Egyptians. And the Egyptians, it's funny because they really knew how to propagate their messages and their symbols, and they really knew how to use memes. Till this day, we use symbolism from the Egyptian times. Even in the US dollar, we have the Eye of Horus, where it is basically a symbolism that comes from the Egyptian times. Mainstream memes. And how do we have memes in our currency? When you look at the dollars, when you look at the euros, you have a series of imagery, you have portraits of presidents, of leaders, of ambassadors, and those are memetics. They are spreading an idea, they're giving you a sense of security, because you see a person that has been good things to a nation, that it's been a leader to a nation, and in that way you feel a sense of security, and you are able to put your trust into some funds and to give it value. When you look at the dollar, they all carry symbols and images. So there we can see a few of brands and logos and even the isoforms from the dollar. Then you can see a few memes, some well-known memes like Doge, Pepe, and they're all basically images that carry meaning to each single one of us. The memes in the subconscious, as I was saying earlier, we as humans tend to imitate a lot, and we tend to propagate our ways and ideas on a subconscious level. What happens with the memes is that when you see a picture on Facebook, when you see a picture of a meme on Instagram, most of the time you don't have to put words into it for people to actually understand what you want to say, right? So it strikes and it bypasses logic and it strikes directly into the subconscious mind. So you're able to actually send a message to people just by a joke or a humorous quote. Now, let's talk a little bit about the memetic economy, and this is what I really like about memes and how to create tokenized communities, and why for me it's so important that we understand the value of a meme and a message. We're heading into a future where AI is basically gonna play a big role in our society. I don't know if some of you have heard about agents or AI chatbots being deployed on social media and engaging with you on a daily basis, and it's becoming very blurred and very thin the line for you to actually know who's a real person and who's a chatbot, right? So there is what I call the digital revolution, and the digital revolution it's fought by us. We are the ones. We are the last line of combat against this new technology that is emerging, and that is through art and memes. Because there's something that AI will never be able to actually mimic us, and it's our sense of humor. And the messages hidden in images. So, in this memetic economy that we're heading into, from jokes we can translate and transfer culture, and then through that culture we can create communities of like-minded individuals, right? It's not the same thing getting into a meme coin because you want to make personal gain than getting into a meme coin because your personal belief systems and your way of seeing the world connects with the people inside of that tokenized community. So that's why it's so important, the art and the memes on this revolution. Tokenizing memes. You can tokenize ideas and tokenize egregores. And what are egregores and why they are so important in this internet revolution is because the egregores are non-physical collective platforms. So an egregore can be a religion, an egregore can be an idea, an egregore can be a revolution that only goes, that lives in the network, right? So, another thing that is really important for the memetic economy, and in our case on the XRP ledger, is because through this memetic culture and through the memes, we're able to actually connect with people outside our ecosystem and onboard them to use our tools. Because at the end of the day, we can have the greatest tools, the greatest technology, but what happens if we don't have the users to actually utilize this technology? And we can have the banks, we can have institutions, but they're not the people. They don't directly represent me as a user, as a person using the technology. So we also want to have the populace utilizing this technology and the communities. So, as I was just saying, it's very important for XRP to onboard new people into the ecosystem and connect communities and build these tokenized communities. But why in specific XRP is perfect for this? XRP, as we know, it's on-demand liquidity, right? It's a rail for tokens to run on top of. You can have multiple assets running on top of the ledger, and when you tokenize these assets, they have instant settlement. So you can build brands on top of the ledger, and how those brands are going to market themselves is through memetics. This is a quick chart back in October when one of the platforms launched, platform meme coins launched on XRPL. We can see the increase of users and the AMM activity. So and you can see the volume, and that was in a month. You can see whether the lines go straight up. That was 4 days after that platform launched. Before we go into this, I want to make a quick note about the AMMs. In the XRPL, we have this beautiful technology that's called the automatic market makers, and that tool is going to be heavily used by institutions, and it's going to be heavily used by banks and all those companies. But it's also can be used by the people. And how the people learn how to use this is through these communities. Now, I already talked a little bit about AI and the future being dominated by AI and automation. The companies already integrating these tools for changing the perception and perspective of the people on the network, and why it's important to have real humans and tokenized communities so you can protect your people from these AI and automations. So you create real human connection through humor and jokes and messages and revolutions, egregores, and you come up with the tokenized communities. That means by people that think alike, because they can connect through the art or through the message. And also, memetics is and it's been the past and will be the future of marketing. Because it's better for a company to connect with their audience through humor and through things that can connect human to human, right? We've been seeing the fall of Hollywood or the fall of these big marketing industries and advertising corporations because they lost touch. Everything is becoming so dry, and so there is no more human connection. So the memetics brings that back. So companies are taking notes. They study the markets, they study the behaviors of the populace, and that's how they're going to continue to improve their marketing campaigns. So it's easier for a company building on the XRPL to make a joke and to promote their product through memes than through anything else. They don't even have to have a meme coin. Memetism. The memes, as I said before, the smallest unit of thought, it's the DNA of culture. Meme coin, fuel of digital tribes, meaning that meme coins is what actually connects those digital tribes, connects the people, connects these tokenized communities, and it's going to be the marketing of the future. Thank you. If you have some questions, some comments, please feel free. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Before we go to our next speaker, I'm going to invite Vitsa back up onto the stage for what I believe is a special announcement.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. So while we wait for Vitsa to connect, Davil, that was a great talk. Thank you so much. I learned a lot from the conversation that we had last night about memes. I'm fairly neutral in the meme arena, I guess. But I learned a lot from him. Okay, over to Vitsa.
Thank you. Actually, we prepared an update to Zman, to the app, for the past weeks. And it was just approved by both Google and Apple, just got the message. Which means it's always a challenge with these two, especially Apple, when it comes to crypto. I'm going to explain just a little bit about what this update is about, because I think it's going to be interesting, even for meme coins. And I'm going to invite two people from the public who feel like it to actually press the button. So two people get to release the actual update today. Yeah?
Very good.
Yes, we have two people. So let's release the update first, and then I'll explain what's being shipped. There's not much to it actually, but I already opened the tabs here. So here's Google and here's Apple. Let's do Apple. You want to do Apple or Google?
I'm Android, so.
He gets to do
There
both.
you go.
My name starts with A, so why not?
Okay, well there's the magic button.
So,
Are you good? Yeah, that's the next one. Okay, that's 4.2.1 in the App Store. There you go. And we got physically present. And that's Google. Okay. Now, what did they actually release? Let's see if I can scale this. Or change the screen resolution. That's better. Okay, so here's the simulator. Now, a well-known challenge on XRPL for issued tokens is that you can only send them to people who opt in to hold or use the token, called trust lines, right? So you can't just send any asset to anyone, which is actually very common on other chains, where you can basically just spam a token, do an airdrop to everyone. XRPL won't allow you to, which is actually an advantage, because you don't get all the shitcoin spam on the ledger. On the other hand, maybe I want to send something to someone who didn't go through the process of setting up a certain trust line. Maybe I want to send RLUSD to you. You don't have a trust line, but I'm assuming you want to accept it at some point. So previously, when you would go to send in Zaman, and you would select any asset, and you would say, I'm going to send one RLUSD to another account. If they wouldn't have set up the trust line, you would get a message like, the end user doesn't have a trust line, you can't send it, you want to send something else. We actually changed that because the XRPL has checks now, which is basically an intention to send, to allow someone to claim something from you. And also how we have remit, where you basically punch through all of this at the cost of paying for the reserve as the sender. When you send a check, there's still a reserve, which you get back, which becomes unreserved once the other party either rejects, cancels, or accepts the check. So we now leverage this feature. If you press next, if we have internet, which is... Let's go to the challenge, and I don't like public Wi-Fi. This was going to happen. Maybe we get it through. We can reconnect the state. Yes! Then we actually get a pop-up where we explain this feature. We do this for 5 times. After 5 times, we assume you get what's about to happen. We just inform you briefly. But we're going to send a check instead, which means I still get to send my transaction, but instead of a direct inbound payment, the recipient is going to get a push notification that they have a check to claim, which they can reject or accept. If they accept, it will immediately, basically, implicitly create the trust line. So the send screen is still the same. I just accepted that. I'm going to send this. Don't you dare. Okay, and now, actually, if I look at my transaction history here, you can see a check creation instead of a payment. On my end, on the sending side, this is now listed as a planned transaction. So this is a check for 1 RLUSD, which I can still cancel to reclaim the reserve of the other party contract. On the other end, this will show as a request. The same check will show up on their request tab, where they actually have a cash or a cancel button. So this just makes it way easier to interact with issued assets between accounts and to use XRPL in real life. That's it. The other small thing that we actually shipped in this release is full support for credentials, which is an amendment that will probably go live tomorrow. And that will, I mean, you can't really use credentials today, but it will allow for the next stage of basically separate order books on the XRPL permission domains and other compliant use of a public ledger. Look, this is what you just shipped. Thanks.
Thank you, Vincent, for the live demo. Thank you so much. Our next speaker, I'm excited to welcome, is Zach Ritchie, founder of the Archipels. He's going to come up to the Chainblock Summit stage to talk on art and NFTs. Zach is Malta's most loved NFT artist, known for his innovative approach to art and sculptures. As the founder of the Archipels and the NFT Club, he has opened doors for countless creators and continues to inspire a new wave of artists exploring the intersection of art, culture, and technology. So Zach, welcome up.
Do you mind if I just plug in? Whichever needs your mind.
Is it ready to go?
Thank you guys for showing up and being here. I can see some familiar faces. Hi guys. So over here, I'm going to just show you how I came into this world of NFTs and through my actually creative journey. Does anyone over here know what NFTs are? Just a show of hands. Okay, cool. I know some of you are very knowledgeable, but those who don't know what NFTs are, can I have a show of hands also? Okay, cool. So, guys, this is my story from JPEG to brand. And in the span of a few years, I've created over 340 NFTs. And before that, I was actually a graphic designer, commercial illustration. I love brands. I love marketing and I love brands and storytelling. And I was lucky enough to do work for brands like Campari, Martini, even Auto Exotica, which is luxury cars, Cellini, Rolex. There's something about illustration that allows you, to tell stories in a different way versus taking a photo. So I really got into NFTs, like all other friends, from a friend who actually suggested, Zach, look into NFTs. I think you'd really like them. I looked into it, and it looked quite interesting. And then everyone was on this thing called Clubhouse. And I was like, man, how am I going to get into this Clubhouse? It was by invitation only. Call it like the law of synchronicity. But a friend of mine, I went to his house and he told me, hey man, I have a free invitation to Clubhouse. You want it? I was like, yes, please. So I go to the Clubhouse and I'm telling you, I think that was the coolest thing ever. I would leave it on, it was like a podcast, and everyone was talking about NFTs and digital art. And I was like, cool. So I'm here and I'm learning all this. I'm like, everyone is sharing this on Twitter, which is now X. Why don't I take this and just share it on Instagram, It's a very visual platform. And so we created NFT Club. And what we did with NFT Club was, I was just doing what I do best, I'm very visual, so I took all these lessons that take time to listen to, and I just presented them very simply. Like, what is an NFT? How do you make money from an NFT? How do you market it? And it seemed to have resonated with people who were even showcasing other artists who were in this kind of like small community. So, for those of you who don't know what an NFT is, I want to try and simplify it. So, an NFT is basically, based on what people know, is it's either an image, a video, an MP3, or it could be a 3D file. But what makes it so unique is you can prove that you own it. It's backed by a blockchain, whatever network it may be. What seemed to be very popular at the time was Ethereum, and it's publicly searchable. You can see who owns that NFT, that artwork. And what made it so valuable for us creatives was these royalties. So what that meant for us is, I can create something really cool, that if I create it well enough, it would keep on passing hands. And because people see value in it, I will make a small kickback from that. So that's really the artist. So it made people realize like, wow, okay, this is a great way for us to filter fans to super fans. And the more people bought and buy, you start creating an ecosystem. So royalties was a very important part about NFTs. Because with that, the more it keeps on passing hands, and royalties are being paid, the more value it can bring. And we started seeing a lot of brands formulate from NFTs into brands. Here are some different types of NFTs. So you have an NFT that is just art. The person is an artist, he creates a lovely expressive work of art. You have a PFP, which were extremely popular. You have historical NFTs. What that means is these are some of the oldest NFTs, like the CryptoPunks, the Kitties, Mooncats. So they hold value because of their historic relevance. Then you have, which I think is super cool, DAOs. And what that means is you buy an NFT and that gives you access to the funds. One of the most popular ones is Nouns. If you haven't heard of Nouns, I really encourage everyone to go check it out. It is kick-ass. So nouns, you put your money inside and you can have a vote. And what they care about is empowering creativity. They are one crazy cool community. Then you have utility. Utility, I mean, it was the one that most people used to love. But sometimes people run out of juice when it comes to utility. Utility can take form of airdrops. It can take form of merch and discounts on merch, gifts, whitelists, gated events, and tokens, which we've seen like Pudgy Penguins, we've seen like ApeCoin. So, why am I mentioning this? When my friend told me about NFTs, I was really inspired. At the point in time, I was saying like, I learned a lot doing work for advertising companies. And I started saying, I think it's time for me to do my own thing. And at that point in time, I had created an exhibition where I had this crazy idea to turn Malta into a cartoon. And I said, Malta's a cool place. And it wasn't until I started obsessively drawing this character who represents the prickly bears in Malta. I like this character because he represents creativity, curiosity, and adaptability. And I started at that point in time, it was roughly COVID, I started creating things for community. People were indoors, I started creating these coloring books, doing online calls with brands, and teaching them how to draw these characters. And one of the fun projects that I did, which is not in Web3, but it allowed me to understand how Web3 works, was this project. I reached out to people, artists, creatives all around the world, and I told them, take my character and draw him in your style and share something that, you learn being a creative. And it was amazing. Like, it's so nice to give something that is yours to other people and let them reinterpret it. And these are some of the things that they inspire me for today. After doing that, I started saying like, okay, I'm going to make a promise with myself. I'm going to draw every single day. And so I started drawing this character every single day. Not as NFTs, but just a way of, I wanted to connect with people. So I said, I'm going to draw my character in a different style and show a form of appreciation to these artists. And I ended up running out of artists on Instagram, and I started using X, Twitter at the time. And things just went crazy when I started drawing artists on X. It led to 22 different collaborations. This is how I got my foot into NFTs. I did an artwork showing appreciation for an artist that I admire, and he told me, holy shit, Zach, he told me, let's mint it as an NFT. I still remember that day. I was like, oh my god, like, yes. And these are some of the brands that I've collaborated with. Some of them you might know, some of them you might not know. Some ones that stick out are Deadfellas, for example, even Consensus, Moody's, Comfort Zone. And then, after meeting all these cool people, I started asking them, I think it's time for me to do my own collection. And they all pointed to this amazing contract called Manifold. If no one's heard of it, back at that time, it was like revolutionary. Manifold allowed me to create my own custom contract. And what that means is, I can actually reinforce royalties, cross-bridging, which at the time wasn't the case, and you can split royalties. So if someone had to collaborate with me, it's automated. Although nowadays things are very different, but at that time, this was amazing. And so I created this collection called Cacti Crew. After doing a whole year doing drawings, just for marketing and reaching out to people, I said, I think I'm going to try and do 265 artworks that I mint and I share. But I ended up doing 315, and there's a very big reason for that. So these were 1 out of 1 artworks I drew and minted on the day. And I can't even tell you how much it's done for me. I got to meet cool people, I got to travel the world and speak at events, pretty much like the stage, and I got to develop myself as an artist, learning 2D, 3D, and here's just a view of some of the different cacti that I have. I also fell into the trap of adding utility, so I would airdrop some NFTs to people. I like music, I love hip hop, so I said maybe I put this character in some hip hop albums and I will give them for free, obviously to the cacti holders. I collaborated as well with some brands, some NFT brands like Treelanders. And if anyone's interested, this is the collection if they'd like to have a look. So after that, I started exploring products. I said, okay, the digital artwork is cool, but wouldn't it be cooler for them to wear the products? I started creating some small things, hoodies, hats, nothing big. And then I started dreaming bigger. I said, okay, what can I do? I wish I could create a toy, for example. And so I still remember I commissioned a 3D designer who created this really cool toy. We started imagining it, but then when it came to actually producing it, it was a nightmare. So that's the difference between creativity and coming up with something. You have to be able to solve solutions. So this is what I learned about NFTs, that NFTs really kicked off well because of communities. If you think about it, you guys are here because you have a shared interest. People join Vistage or they join Crypto Hub because they have a shared interest. This is pretty much the same thing. People buy NFTs to be part of a community. Another one, this was a lesson that, brands do all the time, social signaling. Why do people wear Louis Vuitton? Why do people go out to the Ferrari? People like the social signal. Even it might be a trophy for themselves, So NFTs, they fall into this. And I think a really big one is speculation. People say, oh man, this guy is going to blow up. I'll invest in him now, and, maybe it's going to become something even bigger. So these are just some of the psychology behind things. And obviously there's taste. You might like something, some might not. But I started thinking from that NFT project, I started saying, I want something bigger than this. I don't think it should live as a digital collection. I think it should be expanded to a family. And my dream was to create a cultural playground for this island and have different characters that represent Maltese culture. Some examples, for example, like the Maltese traditional folklore artists. And have them in locations all around Malta that tell a story, or there's a reason for them being there. So this was my goal. And I tried my first shoot at it, and I failed horribly. I applied for a tender. This was my idea, I provided some sketches, tried to visualize it as a render, and I was told that it looks like a joke, and I'm trying to make the island look like a Disneyland, which is, what I want to do, but on a positive note,
Exactly.
So then I took this proposal, and I presented it to someone who would actually appreciate design. And I was lucky enough that Malta's most iconic building actually paid attention and listened to me. So I noticed they had a challenge. And their challenge was they have one of the most contemporary buildings on the island. However, it doesn't really fit. It doesn't really show like it belongs. So what if we had to modernize our culture and include it? And that's what I had proposed. And I finally got the yes, and he said, we don't do one, we do 5. So it led to me doing the landmarks that I always wanted to do. And these are the characters, and I'll explain briefly who they are. This is Pepe, the prickly pear. He is adaptive, curious, and he's my favorite character. I just love this guy. We have Maria, Lady of Fertility. You can find these in the temples. And she's the goddess of fertility. She's very bubbly. She's all about self-confidence and being true to yourself. Then we have Tomas, the brave knight. This guy is extremely brave, very tiny, but also very clumsy. So he represents the knights that gave us our identity. Without the knights, we would have the bastions, we would have the pointed cross. They gave us culture. They pushed us. Nino the Luzzo, he's a charmer, but a very big coward, and he doesn't like to show it. And it goes against the traditional the eye of the Lutz, the eye of Horus, which is there to scare off evil. And obviously, to kind of put the project together, there is this character, Mercury, who represents the building, who brought them all there. And I told these through a bit of a story. I can make some sound effects if you want, but there's no sound. It's cool. So the idea is Mercury, this character, comes to this building and he decides he wants to bring culture to the forefront. And one by one, we start seeing these characters noticing what's happening. So we have Pepe. He's yellow for a reason, guys. He's an outcast. He doesn't fit in. He sees something's going on at Mercury. He's like, I'm off on an adventure. Like the Lady of Fertility in her home. I think you can tell, guys, that I'm very inspired by Disney, Pixar, and I am serious. I want to build a Disney for Malta. We have the knight. As I mentioned, tiny, super brave, but extremely clumsy. Which doesn't really fit well. And that's what makes a lovable character, according to Pixar. I think they know what they were to. Then we have the charmer. Here there's the reversing sign. Beep, beep, beep. But there's also a coward. You can see SpongeBob at the back. So, what did I do then? And what I did is, I showed this kind of map of them making their way to Mercury and bumping into things that are traditional, that are Maltese, you know, to kind of tell a little bit of a story. And when they got to Mercury, that's when they became fossilized in bronze. Obviously, I had to think for the developers, so they're strategically placed all around to generate footfall. You know, with these things, you always have to think win-win. But what was crazy is, those people that told me this looks like a joke, these sculptures ended up winning several awards. Because it was something different. And what I didn't expect, which everyone says, don't let them do that, is children like them. They climb them, they jump on them. And I think that's the thing that makes me feel the most satisfied. Not the fact that I did them, the fact that children just play with them. And they don't move, you know? And slowly that dream that I was mentioning is slowly coming true because I end up getting another gig because of that, another sculpture. Now, although it's not a character that's Maltese, it represents a change that's coming in that area. And the change is that, whether we like it or not, St. Jude's apartment is changing. It's becoming more of a business area. And here, I wanted to show that. Although it's becoming a business area, we should stick together. We're a family. We should change. We should adapt to things. And that's why it's different heights and musical notes. We all come into this world at different ages, and we all have different frequencies. But going back to the characters, I also created social GIFs. I know that Project Penguins are doing it and they're killing it, but I don't have billions of views, but those GIFs generated 188 million views. I mean, quite well. Then I started getting into lifestyle products. So those hats and those t-shirts started expanding. I created 400 different products around these characters. And they're at selected stores. They're at Heritage Malta, and they're also at the Odyssey. They led to collaborations. So now we're seeing a JPEG turn into actual brand. Charles and Ron is a top-level fashion designer. I love their stuff. They're so creative, so innovative. And they, for their anniversary, they wanted to reach out and they said, listen, I have this idea. Charles and Ron, so Ron is from the Netherlands and Charles is from Malta. And what connected them was their love for Malta. So they said, we kind of see Pepe as the messenger boy. Because we used to exchange messages before by mail. And our love for Malta brought us together. And they also created Charles and Ron after that. So we tried to encapsulate that. Created handbags, clothes, collaboration with Levi's. And since it's a local product, they started saying, like, I can imagine this for my campaign. I mean, it can speak to kids, it can speak to adults. So we did a campaign with urban brands. Billboards, shop fits. And this is just a little bit of a closer to see how far creativity can take. Now you can go from a simple JPEG It's actually becoming a brand.
That is curious, creative. Play. That helps you experiment with science, materials, collaboration, and a feature. All life presenting who I am, where.
Thank you, Post Malone. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for your storytelling and the way that you told that and shared your story with us. Do we have any questions from the audience? No? None at all. Wow, I was impressed.
Not even you, Larkin. No questions.
Keep up the amazing work. Yes.
Thank you.
Definitely. Definitely. Wow.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you. We're going to take a short break. Tea and coffee is served out there. I'm sure you can connect out there. Thank you so much.